He was a morbidly obese surgeon destined for an operating table and an early death. Now he's a rebel MD who is fabulously fit and fighting to make America healthy again. This is Stay Off My Operating Table with Dr. Philip Ovadia.
Hey, welcome, folks. It's the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast. Dr. Philip Ovadia. I'm your co-host, Jack Heald, and we are joined today by Courtney Luna, who, my God, how many times have we tried to reschedule and finally managed to make this work? I'm glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. Excited to talk to you guys.
Phil, I'm really excited to have somebody who's going to be able to talk at a level that I can understand.
Zero science here.
Neuroscience. Music major right here. So, yeah. If you want to talk about the chord progressions, I'm your guy. If you want to talk about the medical stuff, that's entirely Phil's. All right, Phil, this is your show, man. Take it.
I'm excited for this one as well. We're going to talk maybe about a little different aspect that we've touched on with some other guests, but Courtney, who I've gotten to know over the last couple of years in the carnivore community, and she has a great cookbook out that we're going to talk about, Carnivore in the Kitchen. And, I think it's an important aspect of this, right? Because whenever you talk about what people maybe should and shouldn't be eating, we have to talk about, okay, how do you make that? How do you eat that? And I love what Courtney's brought to the space with her new cookbook. So before we maybe jump into the cooking details, Courtney, why don't you introduce yourself, give a little bit of your background, and maybe talk about how you became interested in cooking and carnivore.
Yeah, so I'm 40 years old, stay-at-home mom, Southern California. I've been a long time yo dieter. So I went to my first Weight Watchers meeting at the age of 13. So ever since then, I've always had a wonky relationship with food. You name it, as far as a diet, I have tried it. I got a little bit closer to a healthy way of eating with paleo in 2010. I got Mark Sisson's Primal Blueprint book. And so I started doing that. But like I was young, I was in my early 20s. I wasn't really that concerned with my health. It was more like weight loss perspective. But I mean, I was young and having too much fun to care too much about paleo. And then that kind of trickled to keto about, I guess it's been like 10 years now. I dabbled in keto on and off for 7 years. And at one point, I stopped doing what was working for me. So after my second baby, I lost 50 pounds for the second time, maybe even third. And I stopped doing what was working for me. I got caught up in the anti-diet culture BS that's out there where all foods fit, eat everything in moderation, no foods are off the table. I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. I'm going to stop doing low carb and I'm going to try and moderate croissants and pizza and just like everything. And that essentially was a 4-month binge. I gained 40 pounds just trying to eat all the things. I've since learned that I cannot moderate those types of foods, that I am an abstainer, and I just need to abstain from foods that are triggering to me and are addicting. So after that little stint, my husband was sending me Paul Saladino's TikToks, and he sent me them for like about a month, and we didn't talk about it. And finally, one day, I'm like, why are you sending me these videos? Should we not be eating vegetables? I'm like, that's so weird. He's like, I need to do some research. So he goes to YouTube University, researches all the things. I think we should give it a shot. And so we gave it a shot. He went strict carnivore. My sugar addicted brain went to animal based. I'm like, yeah, let's keep the fruit. And after about 5 weeks, I realized that even though I was full from eating a pound of ribeye, like my mouth still wanted blueberries. So I noticed that fruit and the fructose still had a hold on me. So gave the fruit up, went strict carnivore, and the rest is history. It's been the best thing I've ever done. I've lost 55 pounds. I've had horrible acne my whole life. That cleared up. My mental health got better. I was able to go off of my medication, Zoloft, for anxiety and depression. And yeah, it was the best thing I've ever done. It's the only thing that has worked for me, that I'm now going to be like 3 years in May. It's the only thing that I have sustained the weight loss and then I actually feel good.
I want details. I want specifics. Partly because of just my insane curiosity, but also because I think a lot of folks wonder this. When you say carnivore, does this mean strictly meat or does this mean animal products like honey?
So I don't do honey. Okay, that's a lie because once in a while I will have a honey carnivore bar, but I do animals and animal products. So dairy and eggs, and then all the meats, I eat the rainbow of animals. But yeah, I don't, besides those bars, occasionally I'm not putting honey on things. I did in the beginning, and maple syrup on a burger with butter is phenomenal, but that's just, it's too triggering for me. Like that sweetness, it would just, I'm sure it would set me off on a binge, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's always interesting, that discussion, right, as to whether honey is carnivore or not, and I don't think we need to get into the whole debate. But ultimately, I think it is about, finding what works for you, right? And there is not one, strict rule of carnivore, and that's the only way to do carnivore. And if you're not doing it that way, you're not a real carnivore. And, we're going to tear up your carnivore card and block your access to Sean Baker or something. I want to actually go back a little bit in your story. We talk a lot about weight loss, right? But we don't talk about weight gain. And, you said you gained 40 pounds in a month trying to do a, moderate everything approach. Maybe talk about that a little bit, because that's something that, like I said, we don't tend to focus on. You can gain weight. You can gain weight a lot quicker than you can lose weight in most circumstances.
Yeah, so that was a wild time. So yeah, it was 4 months. I gained 40 pounds. And honestly, I was off the rails. There was no controlling. It was like I didn't even care anymore. There was no effort. The first few weeks of it, I did good. It was like, okay, I had one croissant. I don't know why the croissant sticks in my mind, maybe because they're so delicious, but I actually lost 2 pounds that first week. It started out okay, but then it was just a slippery slope. At one point, it's every night when my kids went to bed, I would leave the house and go to McDonald's drive-thru and get a McFlurry. And sometimes I would even, go grocery shopping for stuff and eat stuff in the car on the way home, but bring in a new bag of things so no one knew that I like just ate that whole bag of cookies. So I just felt like out of control. I felt honestly like a drug addict. And yeah, I mean, it honestly feels the same way. Like there's a reason I don't do drugs and drink anymore because it's extreme with that too. And that's how I felt. I felt like a sugar addict. And yeah, it was awful and gross, but I couldn't stop. And I also didn't care. It was a really weird place.
Yeah, I mean, and you're certainly not the only one, and this is why it's so interesting. And we were talking about this actually on the previous podcast we recorded about sugar addiction and about this sort of concept around moderation of sugar. Yet, no one really says the alcoholic should just have moderate alcohol intake, or the cocaine addict can have moderate amounts of cocaine. And yet, for some reason, with sugar, and maybe more broadly, we could say carbohydrates and processed food, there's this like consensus of, yeah, we acknowledge it's bad for you, right? I think we're at a place that most people acknowledge that processed food is bad for you, yet, you should be able to moderate it and just have it in moderate amounts, and it's okay.
Yeah, I think some of these people still don't, we can't even agree that it's bad. One
Wow.
lady comes to mind. Her name's Beth something. I don't know. She's since blocked me on social media, but we couldn't even be on the same page that like sugar is addicting and that these foods aren't even ideal. She still thought this was okay and that we are having the issue and that we need to go to therapy so we can be able to have Oreos in moderation. But that's not even a food. We're not arguing over sweet potatoes and a whole foods diet. They're arguing that we should be able to have Oreos and cake in moderation, and that's not even food. We shouldn't even be having that. And these foods are designed by food scientists to hit that bliss point in your brain where you just want more. I mean, I've seen stuff where it says that sugar lights up areas in the brain like cocaine does. Yeah, it's just wild to me that they think to have a healthy relationship with food that we have to be eating these foods that aren't even food.
So, yeah, following up on that, as you are today doing this carnivore approach, do you think you have a healthy relationship with food?
I mean, I kind of see, here's the thing. They say, because I say I have food freedom, and they're like, how do you have food freedom when you're not eating all the things? And I get what they're saying because in their mindset, you should be able to have all the things. But for me, food freedom is not mentally obsessing about these foods. And, you know, I used to be able to, or if when I was eating all the things, if there was a pile of donuts, I would want to eat them all, or maybe I wouldn't, and I try to fit them in my macros. Like it was just obsessively thinking about them. So now that I don't eat that stuff, there's no all that loud food noise. I don't feel like food has this huge control over me like it did in the past. So for me, it just feels mentally freeing. And yeah, this eating this way might be restrictive in a way, but for me, that restriction brings freedom because my body feels good, my mind feels good. So, yeah, the whole like the relationship with food, I mean, maybe things are a little wonky because I feel like I'm a sugar addict, but I just feel like life is so much better without it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree fully. I think I very much have food freedom these days. I eat the food that benefits me and is, keeping me in good health. And it's, the food noise is very much a real thing and something, I've talked about that I don't go through my day anymore, constantly thinking about what am I going to eat next or when am I going to eat next? I can just, it's more okay, when it's convenient, and I have some downtime, that's when I'll eat. And, I have plenty of great options to choose from. And so I view it the same way that I think I have more freedom from food, maybe should be the right term, but more food freedom these days. And, and it does also strike me as strange that, there are people out there that are so insistent that everyone needs to eat everything that's presented as food these days. And if you say, no, I'm not going to eat that because that's not actually food and it's, not providing any benefits to me, that somehow gets seen as a, some sort of eating disorder.
Yeah. Yeah. It's frustrating that
It's
the whole disordered eating thing. Like, my goodness.
you're a radical extremist for not eating Oreos.
Yeah. I used to in the past, and look how that turned out. I was almost 200 pounds.
Wow. We've had Chris Palmer and Georgia Ede have both been on the show talking about mental health. And I was struck when you mentioned getting off the psych drugs as well. It's not news to us anymore, but I still think it's worth maybe going into a little bit more detail about that, just because this is probably one of the most controversial benefits or dangers, depending on your point of view, of this type of eating. What's
Yeah.
your story there?
And it's funny because I've shared this before, and some of the backlash I got from, the haters, not people in this community, are like, how dare you say that you were able to go off meds because of your diet? How dare you make those claims? I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not the only one. I was on a very, to me, it seemed like a high dose of Zoloft. I was on 100 milligrams or whatever the thing is. Felt very numb. I am a crier, and that made me not shed a tear for a long time, and it felt weird because I didn't feel like myself. So I lowered it to 25 milligrams. Is that right? Yeah. And that wasn't enough. So I was definitely having feelings. I wasn't very happy. I was still struggling, but that's where I was when I started carnivore and animal based. And after a month, I was like, oh, wow, I feel a little bit better. And mind you, at this time, this was almost 3 years ago, I wasn't following influencers. So I didn't know that this was going to be a benefit. I'm still going into this with blinders on. I'm just honestly blindly trusting my husband that this is what we should do. And I had
Well,
no,
he did go to YouTube University.
I mean, yeah, he graduated with honors. So I'm just, trusting him and had no idea what I was getting myself into. I really was going into this because I wanted to lose weight and I just wasn't feeling good. So to all of a sudden feel this shift in my mental health, wow, because a few months prior, I was in like a really dark place. So to feel good again and like happy and, this is amazing. And now it pisses me off that no one was like, hey, what's your diet like? Or there's no like link. I had my OB prescribed them. My psychologist said I should take them. Everyone was like, yes, this is going to be great. And you know what? I needed it at the time, honestly. I
Sure.
needed those meds. If no one was going to tell me food was the answer, it helped me get by. So that's fine. But I don't think they realized that the fuel we're putting in our body affects our brain, which seems ridiculous that they wouldn't know that. I mean, I didn't know that, but I'm just me. I didn't go to medical school. So you think there would be like more of this well-known connection that what we're eating can affect that. I mean, they say if, depression is linked to inflammation of the brain and I'm having frickin' McFlurries every night, like of course my mental health is going to be awful. So yeah, that's one of my favorite benefits, I feel like, because yes, it's nice to be 55 pounds lighter, but to have my mental health back is amazing.
How tall are you?
5'4".
So you were almost 200 pounds, 5'4".
Yeah.
You must have been wildly uncomfortable.
You know what? And I have a lot of footage of myself then, which I'm so glad now to like use for content. But because I was still showing up online before carnivore, oh, here's my keto journey. Now I'm going to try and eat all the things. So I have these videos and I'm like, I look like I was a character in a movie wearing a fat suit. When I looked like Fat Bastard, honestly, from Austin Powers. It looks painful. I look at my face and it looks like it was like about to pop. I was not feeling good. And nobody said a word then. I'm sharing my journey online. No one once said, oh, maybe, like, how's your heart? How's your cholesterol? How's this? And now that I'm healthy, at a healthy weight and feeling good, now everyone has something to say about
Now
what I'm
they're all
eating.
worried about
Yeah,
you.
now
Yeah.
you're concerned. Not when I was freaking obese, but
Yes, look how healthy you got. Your heart's clearly going to explode any day now. It's of course ironic, but it's also a large part of what I make my living on these days, dispelling that. Yeah. Okay. So it's been a couple of years now. You've been, carnivore animal based. Talk about, so you, I guess, you said you have your husband, you have children, talk about what that's in the family, right? And it's great your husband was sort of doing this with you. I know that always makes these things easier.
yeah, I couldn't imagine if he wasn't on board. I feel for those people because I do get those comments where it's like their husband like they don't want to eat this way and to like then still have like bad food in the house that you're not supposed to eat. Like that would be very challenging. So I'm super grateful that he believes in this as well and follows this way of eating. He's a moderator, so like once in a while he can, go off plan and have some things that he probably shouldn't, but he can get right back on track the next day or the next meal and he doesn't give it another thought. For my kids, I guess to throw a label on them, they'd be more animal based. So they eat what we eat, lots of meat, some dairy. They do have some fruit. Occasionally, I will buy them sourdough bread that our neighbor makes. And then we just try and teach them proper nutrition. So I see how even with fruit, they're little sugar addicts. So it's okay. You're not just going to gorge yourself on fruit all day. If you want a piece of fruit for your snack, pair it with the protein. And I try and tell, I mean, my little one, she's 4. I don't think she really cares when I'm like, it's going to keep your blood sugar level. But, I just try and teach them that
She's
this
going to
is,
be intolerable in daycare.
yes.
Oh no, this banana is going to spike my blood sugar.
Yeah, my glucose will be too high. Yeah, so we just try and teach them that. And, we do want to give them the control and the power to make some decisions on their own with food, even if I may not like it. So once in a while when we're out, I'll let them order whatever they want, but I don't want to be always like, no, have them, go to a friend's house when they're older and binge on all the things that mom won't buy. So we give them that freedom at a kid's birthday party, which is like always like horrendous, but it's okay if you're going to have some cake, like you don't need to eat it all. Listen to your body. So we just try and teach them to pay attention to how they're feeling. And then later when they're like, running around like crazy chickens, it's okay. See how you're acting, see how you're feeling right now. This is because of, you ate cake and pizza. So we do our best and just hope that I'm not screwing them up when they get older.
Yeah, always a challenge that certainly resonates with me as well. Then let's talk about what led to the cookbook. What kind of got you interested in doing that? What kind of background do you have around that?
Yeah, so I'm self-taught. I put in many hours at the Food Network channel. Like I used to love, just sitting around watching that, having a glass of wine. So yeah, things have definitely changed since I don't eat any of those ingredients and I don't drink, but I also used to cook for a living. I worked on yachts. It's been a while now. It seems like a whole lifetime ago. And towards the end of my yachting career, I was cooking. So I eased my way up into that. I was a stewardess for a while. And then I was on a boat where I was a stewardess, but cooking for the crew. And then once I was doing that, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is fun. I don't want to scrub toilets anymore. I want to, cook for the guests. So I left that boat and I was a freelance chef, if you will. And my first boat I got onto, I wasn't just cooking, I was still a stewardess. So I would scrub their toilets and then go
So
make
smart.
dinner. But that's where it started. And then, just taking like freelance gigs where a boat would fly me out for a charter and I'd cook for everyone and then fly back. So it was amazing. And yeah, I, showed up online sharing what I was doing after that with low carb and keto. Always thought it would be cool if I would do a cookbook, but never would I imagine it would be carnivore. So yeah, I've just been, sharing recipes and stuff, and my publishers found me on TikTok, and I had already kind of scoped them out before because I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do a book, I'm like, what do I do? Do I self-publish on Amazon? Do I find a publisher and shop it around? So I looked, I'm like, okay, who's Maria Emmerich using? Who's Dr. Baker using? Who's Barry? And they were all using the publisher that I had. So when I got the email, I'm like, oh my gosh, is this a scam? Are they tricking me? And yeah, it ended up being legit, and the rest is history.
Yeah, again, the book is called Carnivore in the Kitchen. And of course, for a lot of people, they think, what do you need a carnivore cookbook for, right? It's take steak, put it on the grill. And that's your cookbook. So talk a little bit about that. I think obviously there oftentimes are misconceptions around carnivore, and that it is, only you just grab a big hunk of meat and, put it on some fire and you're done.
Yeah, some people need a little bit more creativity to keep this sustainable. Not everyone just wants to have steak and eggs every day. That's where I came in. And I do have a chapter of simply meat because I am aware that some people just like to keep it simple. So it's like different cuts of meat, different animals. I do have a little carnivore 101 section in the beginning. So if anyone's like looking to start this way of eating, there's some information. And then, yeah, I have a lot of creative recipes that do have dairy, some don't. I will say pork panko is like how cauliflower was for keto, like cauliflower rice or almond flour. Like pork panko is that for carnivore. So a lot of fun things. I have
Is that like pork rinds?
it's ground up pork rinds. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's working hard for me. I have a carniza recipe. That's one of my absolute favorites. If anyone is familiar with fathead dough on keto, I swapped out the almond flour for pork panko. And you have this dough and this crust that is very similar to a bread. So that's one of my favorites. Cinnamon
Oh
rolls,
my God, you just sold another one. I'm, I'm,
add to cart. Yeah, so there's a lot of fun recipes.
I
Biscuits
will
and
attest.
gravy, lasagna. My kids and my family were my little taste testers throughout this whole book process. And yeah, it was a lot of fun to create, a lot of work, a lot of tears. I'll never do one again, but I'm glad I like have that done and out in the world, and I'm pretty proud of it.
What's your go-to? Oh my God, it's 10 minutes after 5. Everybody's going to be screaming for food in the next 20 minutes. I've got to take care of them recipe.
I DoorDash burger patties from our local burger joint. To
An
be honest.
honest woman. There we go. I love that.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing. But something like quick from my book. I mean, we just did chicken nuggets the other day, so that was fun. Not in my book, but I do mention it. Pork rind cereal sounds absolutely atrocious, but it's so good. You just take some pork rinds, crunch them up, a little, sprinkle of cinnamon if you're getting wild, raw milk or heavy cream or whatever you use, and it tastes just like Rice Krispies do. Like before you would put the sugar on it, so you could always use a sweetener if you like, but sounds horrific, life-changing.
Good.
So we
That's
do
a
that
good one.
often.
Yeah, that's a good one to know.
I'm gonna let my sons know about this because I'm pretty convinced at least three of the grandsons get about 80% of their daily calories from boxed cereal. I'm not positive, but I kind of have a feeling that might work.
It's pretty good. It took me a while to try it. I didn't invent this. I saw someone else do it. It took me a while because I'm like, that is really gross, and it's really good.
Now you
No.
mentioned the Simply Meat chapter, and I think that's interesting, right? Because, a lot of people they really don't know, about the different cuts and how you have to, change preparation depending on certain cuts of meat. So talk about that a little bit. What are maybe some good tips you can give and just, your perspective on that with your chef background?
Yeah, I had someone say they actually emailed me to complain about how one of the recipes was just, I think it was just like a ribeye. They're like, how does that count as one of your recipes? I'm like, a lot of people need that. So people need to be taught how to boil water. Okay. So a lot of people cannot cook a steak. So yes, some of these might be a little basic for those that, may be familiar in the kitchen. But yeah, a lot of people I feel don't know the basics, and that this could be super helpful. I would say some tips for cooking. Like I love using cast iron. I've used cast iron for 10 years now. Get the pan screaming hot, throw in some, I mean, I usually do butter, even though butter burns pretty quickly. Throw in some tallow if you want to be safe, get that hot, and just put the steak down. Give it a good 2 to 3 minutes before you even touch it because you want that nice crust. And then flip it, give it a few more minutes, and you have, if it's maybe like half inch, then you just need a few minutes on each side and you have a really good steak. It can be very simple, or you can do these fun recipes. I love chicken thighs. You can just air fry them. That's really easy. What else are we doing in there? I have some salmon bites, bacon wrapped, chicken thighs. Trying to see, it's been a while since I've looked at that chapter. We've got different kinds of meatballs and stuff. It's fun. There's a little bit of something for everybody in there.
And then, of course, I know everyone's always going to be wondering, is there a dessert section?
Of course there is, because we're all sugar addicts. We all need to get that little bit of sweetness, but I don't even use sweeteners. I find, you know, when you haven't had sweet things in a while, cream cheese, heavy cream, those all taste sweet. If you add a little bit of vanilla, maybe some cinnamon, that kind of tricks your brain into thinking they're like dessert. So I'd say like one of my favorite things in there is cloud bread. If anyone remembers that from keto days, I made it into little cupcakes with the whipped cream frosting. So that's really good. I have a little crepe layer cake on there. There's a mousse, ice cream sandwiches. But yeah, so in mine, I don't have any sweeteners. Of course, anyone that's making this, you could add a little shake of allulose if you want to. But yeah, they're fun. I think they do the trick, when you haven't had sugar in 3 years.
looking for the book. I really want to, I just, I'm a carnivore in the kitchen, Courtney Luna here. I'm seriously, I'm intrigued by this pork rind panko. Um, we do our best to avoid grains completely in our house, just because my wife and I have both learned that we do better. But she makes this killer lemon chicken thingy that's got to be breaded, apparently. My cooking skills are basically turn on the grill, throw the meat on it, flip the meat over, take the meat off. And I want to know about this. And
Yeah.
the the pork rind Rice Krispies is just, I'm so excited about that. Not for myself because I don't care, but oh my God.
Yeah, your wife can make the lemon chicken and bread it in pork rinds. Just dip it in some egg, dip it in pork rinds, fry it up. It's fantastic.
Oh Lord.
I make
Okay.
mozzarella sticks with it, fried goat cheese balls. Ooh, that's one of my favorites with pork
Oh
panko.
man. And is this a picture of you eating a stick of butter for the website? I love
Yeah,
it.
it's delicious to me, but it's also like one of my favorite ways to trigger the haters online. They don't like it.
Oh,
What do you, so the book's been out a while now, probably a couple of months now. Time flies. What do you find, what have you found, about kind of who's buying it, right? Is it all hardcore kind of carnivore community, or are you finding some people that are, you know, it's their introduction to carnivore, or even they're not really thinking about carnivore, but they just want to have better ideas of how to cook meat?
Yeah, I feel like it's not probably a lot of the hardcore carnivore guys that are just eating like steak and meat, but a lot of what I see that at least like the people sharing and tagging things are other moms who are trying to make some changes in their home. I've gotten a lot of messages like, "Oh my gosh, the non-carnivore picky eaters in my family like loved X dish that they made." So that's really cool to see. So yeah, it seems to be a lot of women and also giving it as gifts too, just for those who are interested in eating this way because of that little 101 section in the beginning. And yeah, you don't have to be carnivore to enjoy this. You just need to not be vegan, really. You just need to want to prioritize protein, and this will give you some different ways to do that.
this is really funny. I went to the webpage on Amazon that's got the book, and it's got that frequently bought together bit, Phil.
Yeah,
And people who buy this often, what's the first thing after it?
pork panko.
Pork rind breadcrumbs.
Yeah, I've seen it. It changes sometimes. I have a screenshot where it's my book, pork panko, and then tallow. So I'm like, oh, see, it's like a perfect little bundle gift.
There you go. You'll have to start.
I think it's really cool that a mom of young kids is, I'm not merely that you're doing, that you're living and eating this way, but that you're helping your children do this. Have you seen any behavioral changes or health changes in your kids with the short amount of time that you've been doing it?
Yes, definitely.
Really?
Yeah, because I can see their behavior shift when they have sugar or something that is not good for them. They definitely get wild. And we've had like my son, my older one, he's 6.5. I'm like, how old is he? And I remember at one of his soccer games, because he's pretty fast. They're like, oh my gosh, what do you feed that kid? I'm like, steak and eggs for breakfast. So yeah, I definitely can see a difference in how they behave and how they regulate their emotions. I know when we get a little lax on things, like things are not as good. But when things are dialed in and we're really like on track with them, totally different.
Are they aware of feeling any different?
I pointed out
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're nuts right now. That's because you ate, ice cream earlier. So yeah, I make them aware.
So they're 4 and 6.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So probably still a little early for them to have that level of awareness. I want you to come back on the show 5 years from now
Okay.
and report on. Now, yes, Phil, I'm making them think past the sale and report on how the kids are doing. I think this is You know, as important as it is for us as adults, it's become clear to me that we have we've created this problem in, at least in this country, in our children. We just, I mean, that's Phil's story. You followed the dietary guidelines in the house you were growing up in. And I think it'll just be really fascinating to see kids who are raised this way, see where they are 5 and 10 and 15 years from now. I suspect we're going to be able to do, Phil, what do you call the kind of study where they look back over a cohort over a number of years? Is that a
The
longitudinal study?
epidemiologic studies. Yeah.
I suspect there's going to be some really significant findings from that. And I commend you. I think it's cool that a mom of young kids is doing this, not just for you, but you're raising a generation that's going to be healthier.
Yeah, and just they're just aware of things. And of course, it's them parroting what I'm saying to them. But when we're at soccer and they get soccer snacks, which are always awful, we politely take them and we'll, look through it. But my son, who's 6.5, will be like, "Oh, I'm not having this Gatorade because this has red 40 in it." Or, "Oh my gosh, this bag has seed oils in it." Some, sometimes it's a little, okay, I gotta definitely be paying attention to what I'm saying, but they're listening. And now that he can read, and he'll read, the ingredients on these, and he'll make the decision sometimes to not have something. So I'm like, great, it's working.
Plus, you're the only mom who shows up with grass-fed burgers for soccer.
Oh my gosh. No, I mean, when it's my turn for soccer snack, I'm sure the kids are like, what the heck? Because I'll do a meat stick, a cheese stick, and like an orange or a pouch, like a fruit pouch or something. And they're probably like not excited because all the other bags they're getting are Cheetos, Pringles, candy. I mean, it's just so much
Cocaine,
garbage.
heroin.
Yeah, it's so bad.
That you say that, but also, I mean, I've found that, when my kids' friends are coming over and we have, good steak and, good meat for dinner. And a lot of them are like, they love it. They don't get this at home. And, even things like the meat sticks, right? They're in a lot of ways, they're unique and new. And I do think kids have this innate sense of what they, what's good for them, what should be eating. It's interesting. There were studies done on this, back in the 1940s, 1930s, and they would just take newborn, infants that were starting to eat and just kind of spread, a whole bunch of different food out in front of them and, studying what the kids would like instinctually eat. And it turns out, at that time, some of them would grab liver and start eating it. And, before they get so biased against it, from our society, it is sort of instinctual for kids to eat like this. It's interesting to see that.
Yeah.
That
And
re-
go ahead.
it just raises an interesting question. How much of this of the bad eating habits are a direct result of just screwing up your basic instincts very early? I mean, maybe that's blindingly obvious. Maybe that's really what it is. But I can't remember who it was. It might have been Maria Emmerich, but talked about her kids, and they just don't seem to any longer have a. I'm not sure it was Maria, so I don't want to put her on the spot. But they just don't seem to have that overwhelming urge to plow through piles of junk that most kids do, that I know I had for a long.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I knew about this sooner. I mean, when I first started feeding my kids, I mean, we were always kind of like healthy-ish aware, but I was still giving them stuff that now I'm like, no, like those puffs and stuff, because they tell you that you need to work on that pincher grasp. So they have these little puffs, and it's Lord knows what ingredients were in there, So I definitely would do a lot of things different if I knew now, or if I knew then what I know now. Like it would definitely would be a lot different.
Well, I'm going to
Yeah.
tell you, my kids are grown now, and we were healthy-ish for when we were raising them. but certainly not like today. We did our best. They turned out pretty good. Some of my oldest is a huge human being. Phil's met him, I think.
Yep.
I'm glad he wasn't raised more healthy because I don't know that the planet could handle anybody that large. So you'll do fine.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about your perspective on, doing this online. Like you said, you actually started that even, earlier in your journey, kind of being online and giving, having videos and documenting. Talk about what that's been like. How have things changed there? And, what do you find in the world of social media and YouTube these days?
Oh man, it's wild out there. And like I said earlier, I wasn't following all these influencers, so I didn't know what was up, what I had ahead of me. I think now if somebody is, okay, I'm going to share my journey, they're aware that we are getting hated on in the comments. But I wasn't aware because here I was sharing my low carb keto journey. I never had a bad comment, and not many people were watching it anyways, but no one had anything bad to say. And I remember the video when that finally got some comments. I'm sharing, this was when I first started, I'm sharing what I eat in a day, breakfast as its own video, lunch as its own video, dinner as its own video, and then a whole what I eat in a day. And then I'd throw in recipes here and there. So this was on TikTok. I was posting a lot. And I remember the one video and I'm like, oh my gosh, like all of a sudden all these people are commenting and they're like, where are the vegetables? This is awful. This is horrible. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, wasn't expecting this. And it just snowballed from there. And now I would say my TikTok isn't as happening as it was. I don't know if they're just bored of me and they're on to new people. Now I would say I get more of the views on Instagram, but it's just wild what people have to say. I couldn't imagine seeing something I didn't agree with and actually commenting my thoughts. You may think it and then scroll on by, but the things some of these people say to me, it's like wild. Like, why are you so triggered by the way I'm eating? I'm not even saying you need to eat this way. I'm just sharing what I'm doing. And people are just losing their minds. I think it's triggering because maybe they're like, oh, have I been lied to? Like maybe they're starting to think, oh, maybe the way I'm eating probably isn't the best. But yeah, wild journey. And yeah, lots of hate, lots of articles. I've had a lot of press, which is very surprising that eating this way is even newsworthy. And it's just been a wild ride. It's been fun. I've made, a lot of good friends online. I think I have some good solid community and, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And so that part's been great, but it's just been very eye-opening to see what is going on in people's heads because they share all their thoughts with me.
I want to make sure I understood you. When you were prior to going full carnivore, everybody was kind of hunky-dory. It was the switch to carnivore that triggered all
Yep.
the
Never had one bad comment. And at that time, I think I was around 30,000 followers on TikTok before I switched over to carnivore. So I had some views. Like there was some audience, but never once anybody had anything bad to say. It was once you lost the vegetables, that's when everyone lost their minds.
Who knew Big Veggie had so much power? Oh, oh,
Big veggie is real.
oh my God. Oh,
What does the future hold for you? What else are you working on?
Good question. Not book number 2. We'll wait a little bit on that. I don't know. I'm just kind of trying to figure that out and see like how else I can show up because I mean, I don't want to do coaching. That's not for me. And I want to be more than just recipes. So I do try and share like some stuff on YouTube, like what I eat in a day, like vlogs, like longer style stuff like that. So yeah, I'm currently trying to figure that out. Like what's next for me? I don't know. I have the itch like for some sort of big project and something to work on, but I don't know what that is yet. So if anyone has any ideas, I'm all ears. But I'm busy doing what I am already right now, making content for all the platforms. I have a podcast and I don't know what else I do. I feel like I'm spread very thin, but it's
whoa, whoa, whoa. You
very
didn't tell
fun.
us about your podcast.
I mean, it's not like a lot of people are listening to it. It's not hitting the charts. But yeah, it's on
No, but
podcast
it's not on
apps.
the contact information I had for you. People
I
to
mean,
know about your podcast. I
I
don't
do
want
the
people to
video.
know about it.
I put the video on YouTube, so it's kind of there. But yeah, it's on the podcast apps too, but it's not ranking or anything.
Yeah.
Not yet.
You're now
You,
on the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast. Things are about to get very different for you.
that's right. Keep grinding. We'll get there. Jack and I are 4 years into this now, and it has been a pretty wild journey, I would say, and it is good to see, the awareness around this is certainly growing. The discussion around health and the relationship to the food we're eating is growing, and I think that's all positive. And it's great, all the different voices and contributions we're getting to this.
Yeah, I definitely feel like we're like in this movement right now, and it's just snowballing and it's getting bigger and better, and more people are sharing their journeys. And yeah, it's been good. I think things are shifting and changing, and people are starting to realize, just how crappy a lot of foods are and the processed foods and all that. So if we could even just encourage people to get more into just like whole foods eating. Like if you still want to eat fruits and vegetables, that's your thing, but let's move there instead of the Doritos and Oreos. So I think things are changing. I feel optimistic that we can make some changes for sure.
Oh, as we speak, RFK Jr. is very close to being uh, confirmed as the Secretary of HHS. It's hard to imagine that he would have remotely the level of support that he's got nationwide if there wasn't a tremendous number of people who have come to the conclusion that our government has been lying to us about food and has been allowing us to be poisoned for 40 or 50 or 60 years. It's time to change it.
Yep.
So this is a great thing. All right, our guest has been Courtney Luna. Her website is courtneyluna.com. The book is Carnivore in the Kitchen. I got to tell you, folks, just go to her website and read a little bit. This woman has a tremendous sense of humor. I knew I was going to enjoy just talking with her just from the website. If the book is half this entertaining, it's going to be awesome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Any last words, Phil?
No, just like I said, and I do have the book, and so I can say it is informative, entertaining, and there are great recipes in it. There are certainly a few things that never really occurred to me to combine before in carnivore world. So I think people will learn a lot from it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, I'm going to go eat some hamburger patties.
Not pork rind cereal?
I don't have any. So this has been the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast. Thanks for joining us. All the other contact information for Courtney Luna will be in the show notes. We'll talk to y'all next time.
Chances are you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you didn't need to change your life and get healthier. So take action right now. Book a call with Dr. Ovadia's team. One small step in the right direction is all it takes to get started. Contact us at ifixhearts.com/talk. That's ifixhearts.com/talk.